Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you are doing well. And I thought it might be fun to come on here and give a bit of a retrospective on my feelings in regards to the Weeknd's House of Balloons, which if you go into my review back catalog, is one of my most hated reviews, one of my most controversial reviews, a review that again and again and again I still get questions about to this day. Have I changed my mind on this album? Have I warmed up to this album? Do I still think it's a 3? Now, I will come on here and say, because I feel like it was worth saying, that my perception of this record over the years has certainly changed. Has it become one of my favorite Weeknd projects? Do I think it's one of the greatest records of all time in all of R&B? No, not necessarily. But I will say a handful of things, starting with number one, the incredible amount of influence, the sea change this record created in the world of R&B at the moment it dropped. Going back, thinking about all of the artists that have sort of latched onto this wave of moody, sad, depressive, atmospheric R&B, and obviously Abel's stuff was not the first to embark on that, but you have to give him credit for breaking through with it in a very extreme and a very bold way. So again, I will say, going back and listening to this with all of that in mind, it is incredible just how much momentum Abel was able to build off of this one mixtape and the couple of others to drop post that. Now, in the grand scheme of the trilogy as we know it, Echoes of Silence is still my favorite. I think it still has the strongest batch of songs, the strongest production, the best vocal performances of the three. But I still have warmed up a little bit to some key tracks off of House of Balloons, most notably the intro, which I think is a stunning, powerful start to the entire thing. The vocal layers and the roaring bass and the slow, dramatically paced beat on that one are a really powerful moment on the record. Then there's also the title track in Glass Table Girls, which was a moment that I was pretty drawn to, at least production-wise, the year that it came out. Abel's vocals and sinister lyricism on this track are pretty great. The song also makes me think of some ideas and aspects and characteristics about the Weeknd's music around this point in time that I wish carried out further into the catalog. And I don't just mean into like the new record where Abel is going into all of this 80s stuff. I'm talking a little bit more about the really cool beat transitions, the fact that he's rapping on the back end of that track quite well in a way that is really cold-blooded in terms of tone and attitude. And then we're also talking about like the really eclectic sampling and interpolating that he would do on some tracks from this record that, again, I wish he indulged in a little bit more on a record like Beauty Behind the Madness or Starboy. I think those records certainly would have benefited from that type of treatment, but maybe at the end of the day, Abel wanted to focus more on doing purely original stuff, or maybe he's financially disincentivized from doing more sampling and interpolating because how much of a cut would have to go from a song to another artist or a label or somebody. Either way, I do think that was one of the aspects of this project that was truly cool, even if I wasn't vibing with a lot of the lyrics and songwriting at the time. There's also 28, which I think has a really good vocal performance and tune to it. But another thing that was really hitting me as I was listening to this was just how much vocally Abel has advanced since this point. I think his singing, his delivery, the passion with which he gives us his vocal lines has improved by leaps and bounds since this project came out. In fact, the songs where the instrumentals are the most washed out are the most hollow or are the most uneventful, be it on a What You Need or The Morning. That's really where Abel's lack of vocal presence at this point is the clearest. The lack of clear, coherent songwriting as well, which I think, again, Abel outdid himself in that regard on Echoes of Silence. And even at the end of the day, if I do prefer the songwriting on that tape or in After Hours, for example, in comparison to House of Balloons, there is also something that makes me miss the supreme level of darkness that a lot of these tracks exhibit. That, unfortunately, didn't hit me quite as hard as I would have liked it to the year that this thing dropped. Instead, a lot of the storytelling and lyrics read to me as being kind of douchey and predatory in a way that I just didn't care for. I still prefer Echoes of Silence to this quite a bit. I still prefer After Hours quite a bit to this, and I think that is still one of Abel's best projects easily. Though there are definitely songs from House of Balloons that I appreciate a lot more than I once did, and on top of it, I think just kind of hearing the massive amount of influence this has had over the years puts a lot of the material on it in perspective. Now, if I were to re-review this, honestly, I don't think a lot of you would be happy with the re-review. I think there would still be a lot of angry reactions, frankly, but I guess now I see more of the potential in what Abel was going for here. I'm not quite as blown away by it as many people still are, and I think were the year that it came out. But again, it didn't take long for Abel to remedy a lot of the issues that I had with what he was doing here, because I enjoyed Echoes of Silence so much more, even if I am kind of like the odd man out on that project being so good. I don't think I hate this now as much as I'm just slightly indifferent toward it, or I think it's kind of good, or, you know, indicates something better or more interesting coming down the pipe. And I think I will leave it at that. Make sure to leave your thoughts on my thoughts down in the comments, as your perception of this project, with it being as old as it is at this point, changed over the years, good or bad. Let me know. You're the best. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, The Weeknd, House of Blues. House of Blues. House of Balloons. Forever.